Okay, so my kayak season is pretty much over. There might be one or two trips, freshwater, maybe lake trout. I joined my cousin this weekend, supposedly for a winter flounder trip. I think I mentioned before how tedious I find winter flounder fishing. So I brought some small jigs, a couple of Rapala slab wraps, those blade baits I use on porgies, and just to see what's down there. Surprisingly, the bay is paved with the sundial. And I've caught sundial before, always as a bycatch while I'm fluking, but I've always wondered what they taste like. So, this episode of Catch and Cook, we're gonna find out. And they're at least 10 times more fun than winter flounder in terms of fishing for them. So here I'm using a 3/16 ounce Gamakatsu jig head, and I think these are 2.5 or 3-inch gulp mullets. The tide is ripping, so they're kind of a challenge to get down, but I'm doing very slow hops along the bottom and letting it free fall. And they take a jig just like a fluke. They come up and stop your jig on the way down. I'm also testing out my new GoPro. I've been using a old Sony action cam that unfortunately died on me, so here I'm using the GoPro Hero 5 and testing out different settings. Yeah, that's a pretty decent one. They're pretty cool looking fish. They're not the same shape as winter flounder or fluke, more like a diamond turbot shape. Um, anyway, here I'm using a slab wrap and I'm jigging it nice and slow and letting it fall on slack line, just like I would for porgy. I'll leave a link in the description below on all the gear I'm using. The tide is running really fast. We're on a supermoon tide. And these fish, they don't fight that hard, but they still fight harder than winter flounder. So as far as I know, there's no size or bag limit on these fish, but as usual, you should be reasonable with how many you take. I think we ended up keeping two and gave one away to someone on the bulkhead who wanted to try it out. But just like sea robin or skate, these fish are not regulated. Doesn't mean you should bring home a bucket full. And we're here on back using the jig. This is the beginning of the incoming tide. Yeah, this is very much like fluke jigging in miniature. You're watching your line, you see a tick in your line, or your line stops falling before it should hit the bottom, and you set the hook. As opposed to winter flounder fishing, which is more like carp fishing. You have to wait for them to nibble up your worm or clam. This is much more fun. And here my cousin's gonna net my PB sundial. Are you hooked up? It's okay. It's a good sport, my cousin. I end up filming and testing out the raw sundial. No, he got it. Thank you. Yeah, so I didn't capture any footage of us keeping the sundial, but as usual, we bleed them out. There's a little bucket. I think the one in our cooler is bigger. And I just cut down to the backbone through the gills and put him head first down in the bucket to bleed. Still like so skinny. Oh. That would be nice cold, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay, so here we go. We're going to do 2 dishes. The first one, we're just going to fry it up and not fillet it. We're going to keep it whole. You're not going to get much of a fillet out of these fish. They don't call them windowpane flounder for nothing. They're very, very thin, especially the white side. So here I'm just trimming up the fins. Off camera, I will gut the fish, scale it obviously. I find using this deba knife to scale any fish with very small scales like fluke, flounder, and here sundial. It works better than most scalers, and I have a dozen different scalers. And since we're pan frying it in hot oil, we're removing the eyeballs. Otherwise they'll explode. And just get as much of the liquid out of the eye sockets as you can. We're gonna pre-season, just a little bit of salt, actually quite a bit of salt, but that's fine. Wrap it in paper towels, put it in the fridge, let it rest for 10-15 minutes, however long it takes you to prep the rest of your mise en place. This will just firm up the flesh a little bit and let the salt penetrate the fish for more even seasoning. Okay, so we're making like a Vietnamese dipping sauce. So I have equal parts ginger, garlic, and red chili. And the chili, if you want less heat, you will remove the seeds, and even less heat than that, you'll remove the membrane. So I have this really tiny mortar and pestle. That is a pinch of salt and about a teaspoon of table sugar, just to act as an abrasive. Okay, so we'll reserve this paste, and here we have some rock palm sugar. And I'm going to break this down a little bit, then pour the vegetable paste back in, incorporate everything. So the ratio to this sauce is 1 part fish sauce, 1 part sugar, to 4 parts water, and everything else is optional. Okay, the paste comes in. I added some finely minced shallots, and here's the fish sauce. It's very powerful. You can find it at most Asian markets. And then 1 part acid, in this case lime juice. I ended up using almost the juice of this entire lime. Everything is to taste, so if you prefer it more acidic or sweeter, you would adjust to your palate. Okay, here the seasoning is to my liking, so this is the serving bowl that I poured it in. And now we can fry the fish. We're dusting the dressed fish in cornstarch. You can use flour too. And since it's so thin, I think we're going pretty high heat and cooking it maybe 70-80% on the dark side, since that's a thicker piece of meat. You need your oil to be relatively hot and lay it down very gently away from you. So I let the first side go about 6-7 minutes. Then you're ready to flip. And as usual, one hand on top of the fish, your spatula underneath, and a gentle flip. Here I'm using the rim of the frying pan to rest the fish. You never want to just plop it down into the oil, just kind of slide it back in. And there, I say that's pretty perfectly cooked. And here I'm seasoning the side that was just fried with some more kosher salt. Salt and pepper now as opposed to later when it's hot and the seasoning will stick. Here I'm just kind of tilting the fish to let the oil drain out of the body cavity. And that's pretty much it. So don't do any crazy garnish like bed of lettuce, anything like that. It looks best just on a nice plate, a few wedges of lime, and your dipping sauce. That's it. Everything on a plate should be edible. Okay, so as usual, my cousin is going to test it first, but it was surprisingly good.
Nice and firm, this meat.
Is it?
Yeah.
It looks good. Mm-hmm. Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
You drizzle a little sauce in there.
There we go. Oh.
How is it?
This is better than flounder.
Is it?
It's better than flounder. Wow. The texture on this fish?
Yeah? I mean, it looks good. You just gotta make sure we catch like the largest ones.
Yeah. That might motivate me to go back next week. just knowing
Sundial
how much.
Slayer. Good? Okay, here's a still photo, and this fish really was delicious. Very fine, delicate texture, and if they grow larger, I think they would be really popular. So here I'm filleting the second fish for a raw preparation, and as usual, if you're eating raw fish, it's risky, and you minimize that by proper food handling practices. Everything should be clean, your hand, your knife, your cutting board. We're gonna end up rinsing this in a ice brine. So here I'm candling the fillet to see if there's any worms in it. I have no idea if this is a quote-unquote safe fish for raw preparations, but I guess we'll find out. Alright, so we rinsed the fillets off in ice brine and then wrapped it up in paper towels. So there I made kind of a homemade ponzu, just dark soy and lime juice. And I'm cutting the sashimi pieces pretty similar to what I do if it was fluke. I'm dressing it with the ponzu sauce on the plate. A little knob of wasabi, some pickled ginger, all this stuff you can buy at your Asian market. And then this is daikon radish sprouts. There's a little peppery note to them. Alright, so here my cousin will test out this dish. I also had a few pieces, so wish us luck.
delicious.
Yeah, and a ponzu.
It's delicious.
Is it? Okay, moving forward, since fishing season is coming to an end, I'll be doing some more pure cooking videos. So if there's anything you guys want to see in particular, leave it in the comment section below. I have one or two more catch and cook videos in the vault, so after that, pretty much anything goes. I'm toying with the idea of doing some cooking technique videos, maybe a 2 or 3 part series on stir frying, especially stir frying at home, which is a completely different thing. And yeah, let me know. So here's a still photo of the sashimi plate. If you like what you see, please subscribe, and thanks for watching.